I believe Lord will speak to everything that's going to be said here today. Now, this one thing ended up being 5 things. But it's still one thing. It's still focused on this one thing that is so important. You're looking at me like you have no idea what I'm talking about. You're like, he needs more plasma. That's his face. Jeez. Okay. So, when we talked about this one thing, the whole concept, the whole idea was that, like with all of the things in life, stop it. With all of the things in life that we do, with so many things that are so important, with even more things that are so urgent that they need our attention, they need our time, this one thing that actually should change our life for better ends up being completely neglected, ends up being forgotten, just because there are some things that have an appearance of importance, like I gotta make money, like I gotta get my education, like I gotta get my life together. Like these things seem existentially important, and they do have their importance, but there is this one thing that supersedes them all, and if we focus on it, it literally changes everything in our life for better. So, and the concept starts with Philippians chapter 4. You guys open your Bibles. Let's kind of go through that a little bit. Just to kind of, book of Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 to 9. I'm sorry, we don't have any Bibles for you guys. Usually everybody is just bringing their own. Yeah, the Bible app. Yeah. So, Paul starts this kind of speech, encouraging people. And the coolest thing about him, when he was writing this, he was in a dungeon waiting for an execution. Actually, he was waiting for a verdict. He didn't know if they're going to kill him, if they're going to let him go, but he was in a dungeon at the time. And he was in a Roman dungeon, which was not really a pleasant place to be at. So he writes these things. Somebody, be so kind to read Philippians 4, verses 4 to 9.
Always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember the Lord is coming soon. Tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me. Everything you heard from me and saw me do. Then the God of peace will be with you.
Thank you very much. Now, you guys remember what was the cool thing about it. So over here, what Paul describes, he says, this is kind of a person you can and you should be pretty much in your daily life. Wherever you are, whoever you're with, whatever your circumstances in life are, good, bad, ugly, whatever they are, this is one thing that you can become and simply be because you're doing the right thing. And then he pretty much, over here, what Erlen just read. So essentially, he says you will be joyful in life, no matter what. No matter how hard it is, you will be joyful. You will be driven by common sense. Not illusions, not delusions, not emotions. You'll be driven by common sense. You won't be anxious. Your talks to God will be prayers of thankfulness, not prayers of need. You will have amazing peace. You will just be very calm in life situations that are grappling you. Your mental, emotional state will be impeccable. Your thoughts will always be leaning to positive outcomes. Not worst possible outcomes, but quite the opposite. And then in the end, he says, God will be with you. Now, this is a blueprint of the opportunity that we have, who we can be, literally like right now, if we do this one thing that we talked about in the past month. So Paul is kind of like tossing out a teaser. You know, when you watch those kind of movie trailers. Well, that's kind of what he's doing over here. Before getting into explanation, how do you become this person? He says, this is the deal, guys. This is who you can be. Now imagine your life. Imagine with all of the stress and struggles that you're dealing with, whatever they are. Imagine simply being joyful, being peaceful, being calm, making good decisions every single time, always being positive. You're almost like that annoying person, you know, that everybody looks at like, come on, what are you happy about now? Do you know those people? You know, like, come on, let us be miserable a little bit, you know. I saw like, there was that cool meme. It's like, who remembers the good times? And everybody's like, okay, who remembers the somewhat okay times? Yeah, those were the times, you know. Yeah, somewhat okay times, you know. But no, that's exactly kind of the thing. We live in a world that is telling us this is all you can be. Like, this is as best as you can get. You'll have to take those prescription medications to calm down your bipolar tendencies. You'll have to, like, you'll have to deal with the fact that you will just be sad and burnt out in life, and you will never have enough sleep and so on, because that's how life is. But then Bible says, no, that is the wrong way to see things. That is a completely wrong way to look at things. This is your opportunity who to be. You can be full-time, joyful, peaceful, loving, positive, if you do right this one thing. So let's talk a little bit about this one thing. So this one thing, as I said, is actually 5 things. One thing to attain, one thing you need, one thing to strive to, one thing to know, and then one thing to do. Now, if you guys remember, we were talking about this one thing pretty much talks about prioritizing the element of your spiritual connectedness over all the other elements in life. And the idea is set your right foundation before you even start with life. Before you even, okay, all of us started with life big time. We are kind of neck deep into it. So you can still change the foundation. You can still change what you build your life on. One thing that you need, setting right priorities. You know, we look at things that we really deem important. We consider them essential. But then Bible says, no, whatever that is, if it's not matching this one thing you need, you're missing out. Because when you set your priorities straight in your divine connection, things start happening amazingly. One thing to strive to, setting this right goal in life. Look, all of us have goals, right? You guys have your plans. You have your annual plan for this year. You have your 5-year plan. You want to be here. You want to be there. You're looking your kid grow. You have a plan of where is he going to end up. And we all have these things, and that's great. But there is this one vertical goal that if we prioritize first, if we set that goal right, all these other goals that we are fighting so hard to make them right, all of them just consolidate and they just go with the flow. Sounds like magic, right? One thing to know is setting right perspective. So we have a perspective of the world, how world works, how things work in the world, what you have to do, what you have to say in order for things to work. And then we have over here Bible telling us, no, that's not the perspective. You have to change your perspective, the way you see the world. And then last one is one thing to do, setting right you. Choosing you the way you should be in comparison to who you are right now. All of us look in the mirror and all of us have a reason to curse, right? For so many things. And then Bible tells you, no. When you look in the mirror, you're not to see that you anymore. You're to choose, set the right you. So that was the topic that we talked about 2 weeks ago. I would like us to go through every one of these for a few minutes. We have about 45 minutes, plenty of time. And just kind of see what you guys remember. So the first one thing to attain. Mark chapter 10, 21. Somebody please be kind to read out loud. Mark chapter 10, verse 21. The food is done. So we have burritos, frittatas, and taquitos. If anybody wants some, just go and grab it. Don't disturb anybody else. Somebody, Mark 10:21.
I'll read it.
Please.
Jesus looked at him and loved him. One thing you lack, he said. Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then come follow me.
Now, this one thing to attain. I just attained 3 things. One thing that's interesting over here. So, Jesus looks at this. You guys remember the story. So let me remind you real quick of the story. So we have a story of a rich young man. Jesus is teaching. He has like crowds around him. And suddenly the crowd just splits. And there he comes. Like he walks in and everybody is buying to him and everybody is looking at him. And he comes to talk to Jesus. And he tells Jesus, hey, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? What do I need to do? Now, Jesus tells him very simple. Hey, you know what to do. The law says pretty clearly, obey 10 commandments and you're good to go. And this young man tells him, I've been doing that all of my life. Like, I've been trying to stick to the T with all of the rules and regulations, and that's all I did. And Jesus looks at him. Now, this is cool. So Jesus looks at him. And Bible says Jesus really liked him. He's and Jesus didn't rebuke him. Like he would do that all the time with other people. All the time, like when people were saying, well, I'm this, I'm that, and Jesus points out, like, shut up. Like, you did this, you did that. Like, he was pretty brutal, you know that, guys. Now, with him, Jesus is so kind. He's like, I like you, dude, because you're really trying. You really want to have this eternal life. It really matters to you. And then he tells him this. You lack one thing. Now, you guys remember, what did he have that we don't? This man, what did he have that we don't?
I can think of 2 things.
Hmm?
I can think of 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
That we lack riches, unfathomable riches, and righteousness.
So this guy had the money. I inherited, earned, whatever it is, but obviously he was financially independent. He was financially abundant. And then second thing, he really had a sincere heart. As you said, righteousness, where he really wanted to serve God. And that was more important to him than anything else. Because he says, I've got this, but it's not enough. What else did he have? Who was he? How does the Bible describe him?
He was young.
He was young. At the time, being young meant being in your teens or 20s. He was younger than most of us here. He was like Josh Young or something like that, with millions of dollars in his bank account and assets all over the country. He had money, he had youth, he had fame. Like, he was well known, and he was liked by everybody, which was kind of implied in the story. And then Jesus says, you lack only one thing. One thing. What was that one thing that he lacked? What did the verse say? Who read the verse? Who was reading? Jenny? What was this one thing that he was lacking? Mm-hmm. Treasures in heaven. No, this is the question. He had all of the treasures of this world, whether we're talking about material or emotional or even spiritual in a way. But Jesus tells him, you lack one thing. You lack a treasure in heaven. Now, what is that? What is a treasure in heaven?
Selflessness. Selflessness.
Selflessness, yeah. Treasure in heaven reflects in selflessness. That's right. What else? Come on, think.
Didn't we discuss before, like, the souls that you bring to God?
Sorry, say again?
The souls you bring to God, like the others. Didn't we talk about that?
I can't recall that, but okay, you're talking about sharing what God gave to you with others, bringing them to God. Okay. I guess in a way, that's what Jesus was referring as well when he was talking to this man, because he told him, sell all you've got, give it to the poor people, and then you can follow me. Only 11 guys in that crowd heard those words. Come and follow me. You know, everybody else followed him by proxy. But he was literally the 12th guy invited personally by Jesus to follow him. So it could be. But what else is this treasure in heaven? How else do you guys understand it?
I thought it was like peace and joy, like those things.
Okay.
That, like, money can't, you can't get them with money.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when he says go and sell all your possessions, that's essentially saying you're not depending on the things on this world anymore. Now you're depending on me, right?
Yeah, you see, this is an interesting thing. Yes.
The reason why selfishness is because like you can't go up to heaven and still want and have that like desire of wanting, that greed, because you're gonna be in heaven where there's like literally streets full of gold and crystals everywhere,
Obviously, yeah.
and the desire of want won't be good in heaven. That would be torture.
The problem with this rich young man, pretty much, is this element of wrong trust. So, what he does, he's rich. When you're rich, you feel very comfortable about things, right? Because, hey, money can solve a lot of problems. You know, you have problems with, I don't know, relational problems. You can solve them with, maybe not to the T, but you can solve a lot of relational problems with money. You have problems at work, you can solve them with money. You have problems in the family, very often you can solve them with money. But not everything can be solved with money. But this man over here, he creates an idea that he has an idea that he is perfectly fine where he is. Because Jesus tells him, listen, this is the deal. I need you to switch your foundation. Because your foundation is based on the idea, make money, live as best as you can with it, because that is the only thing that's going to keep you off the ground. And then Jesus tells him, no, I want you to get rid of this foundation so you can build a new one, a right one first. And what is that other foundation?
Oh God, Jesus, follow me.
Okay, what does that mean? How can him following Jesus replace all of his financial stability?
Well, it won't replace his financial stability, but it will be a stability that will be unmatched.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. It's not going to replace his financial stability, but it's going to replace his stability. But there's also another thing over here. I believe it would replace his financial stability as well. Because here's the thing. Truly rich people are not the ones who have a lot, but the ones who have more than they need. And having more than you need is a matter of perspective. We're going to talk about that like later on. Whether you have enough or not cannot really be objectively quantified. Because, like, as I said, when a few years ago when we went to Africa, looking at those people over there, from their perspective, all of us, even homeless people, have more than enough. Because even homeless people here live better than middle class in Africa. You know? So the idea of enough does not come from what you've got, but on what you stand. And the idea of abundance comes from there as well. So one thing to attain is this foundation, this idea, this concept, that if you build your life on your divine connection, on your relationship with God, instead on your material possessions, that all of us either have them or don't have them, life is going to change in many positive ways. That makes no sense, right? Or it makes sense to you perfectly.
Right.
Okay. Once you finish.
Keep going.
So,
Find out later.
all right, tell me. So, to what extent this makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense, but I just feel like it's one of those things that, like, it makes sense because you can understand it, but sometimes it feels like it's one of those, like, idealistic ideas, you know? Like, oh, it's too good to be true. Like, there's bills and there's things you have to do and all these worries that you think about. But, like, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it is possible, but it's a huge, like, mind shift.
Why is it such a huge mind shift to switch this foundation?
Because we're so dependent on, like, what we know, how we've grown up, what we see, what our society tells us. Like, you're shifting all of that. That's a lot.
That's a lot to shift.
Yeah.
It's like your hard work.
It's like what?
You put all that hard work into your possessions, and people typically say, like, I worked for this, this is mine. And to hand it over to someone they didn't, at that point, like, maybe didn't trust, and they're giving you a whole other, like, bag of things. And you're like, is it real reliant? Like, am I trading you this, like, my top of the line phone for something I'm not familiar with? So.
Okay. So, go ahead.
I don't think it's wrong to work hard and be successful and do well and all that stuff, but it's wrong to have possessions that overtake you and overtake you as a person and your relationship with God and stuff like that. God, because guess what? If you're broke and you're poor, you can't help yourself and you can't help anyone else.
You like curse God.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, Philip Rego, he told me this a couple years ago, because I was trying to help other people and, like, hey, what can I do? He's like, dude, you gotta help yourself first. You gotta make sure that you're not sinking, and then God's gonna bless you more than you can, so you can help others. And you see, he goes to Haiti and other places and does a lot of things with the ability that he was able to be successful first.
Thank you very much. So the problem of material foundation is not the problem of actually having or not having. The problem is, because here's the thing, there is a lot of people who have very little, but they are abundantly rich. And you can see that in their demeanor. You can see that in their behavior. You can see in the way they help others. And you realize that they're obviously, whatever they've got is plenty for them to have it shared. And then you have a lot of people who have more than all of us combined here, who are not going to give a dime for our Ukraine trip, or for the earthquake in Turkey, or for the hurricane in Texas, or whatever we've been gathering money over here for. You know? And then you realize who is actually poor. People who don't want to give out of not their extras, but out of what they have this foundation of material scarcity. And this rich young man in the story, he was that guy. Because Jesus simply expected him, listen, I want you to rely on me, and whatever you've got, feel free to give it away, because I'll make sure that you are okay. And he didn't believe it, because he couldn't imagine a life in which he is not going to witness all of his abundance right there in his possession, instead of witnessing his abundance being present everywhere and God simply directing it to him at the right time. So, the moral of this lesson over here, set the right foundation, is this: don't chase material things, because they are so freaking elusive. You'll see it, not this year, but you'll see it next year. Next year, when the economy goes to the dumps, as pretty much always happens after the election year, next year, when all of the paychecks go down, when people start losing jobs, when where the inflation starts eating up everything, and you're going to go to the store and spend $100 on filling up one of those bags, not 3, then you will understand how important it is right now to change this foundation. Because here is the promise from God. You rely on me, I'll make sure you're okay. You do your best. You absolutely do your best. Be smart with your finances. Plan it out. Be rigorous about it. Be disciplined about it. Work hard. As Philip said, make it, yes. But don't expect debt to supply you with abundance. I will supply with abundance. Now, as you said, this is very idealistic, and here is why it's very idealistic. Because we never experienced it. We see other people experience it. We read books about people from rags to riches because they relied on God and so on. And it's so amazing. Like, it's so beautiful to see the power of God working in other people somewhere in another city or whatever. But we never experienced it. And then it's so abstract, you know? But until you step out in faith and choose to do this, you're not going to see the effects of it. But I'm telling you this, the moment you step out in faith and say, okay, this is what I've got, God, how can I make this world a better place with it? He's going to give you opportunities. You grab those opportunities, He's going to give you more. Like the simplest experiment that for decades we've been challenging people to do is tithe. So, take 1/10 of your paycheck. First, take 1/10 out and give it for the preaching of the gospel. Give it to church. If you don't trust the church, support some humanitarian project. Give it to needy people that you know that they need it, and then say, okay, Lord, I took this tent, I gave it to you. Now you figure out how am I going to survive with the rest of this. I remember Philip giving testimonies over there in Nevada, like year after year, about this. I gave my tithe. I didn't know how I'm going to survive, and then things just started pouring in. And we had, you guys remember the Malachi project that we had in Nevada? So for 3 months, you keep giving your tithe to the church, and we're going to put it aside. And then in 3 months, if God doesn't bless you, you get your money back. It's like a savings account. We had literally dozens and dozens of people doing it. Absolutely nobody ever came back to ask for money. Quite the contrary, people are coming back and like, this is the best thing I did. So many times. I remember like the first time when Gordon was doing that, when I was a youth pastor, barely got to Arvada. You guys, you remember George Silva, Adam's and Abe's dad. So he was, Gordon talks about that, and George comes to him after the service, like, Pastor, you're going to bankrupt the church. You can't do this. Everybody's going to start asking for their money back. And Gordon challenges him. Here's the deal. I'm going to get out of my paycheck. I'm going to double your tithe and give you double back if in 3 months you come and tell me that God didn't bless you. So 3 months later, George comes before the church. He's like, I got a better job. My wife got a better job. We got a better car. Our kids are behaving. Like, I don't know what to ask more. Like, this is amazing. Like, I should have done that years ago. And that was, yeah, especially Adam and Abe. Yeah, that was a miracle. Yeah. But the whole concept is this. Even though it's so abstract, even though it sounds idealistic because we don't experience it around, doesn't mean it's not real. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that very soon, if you try, you're going to experience it for the first time. And it's going to be amazing. So that's my challenge to you. Pray over your paycheck. Start with basics. Take 1/10 out and give it to God in whatever ways you feel is the right way to do it. We collect it over here as well, for this ministry over here and for other things. But test Him, and God, this is the oddity of it. This is the only place in the whole freaking Bible where God says, put me to the test. Come on, put me to the test. Try me out. Come on, do it. And see if I'm not going to open the gateway, the floodgates of heaven. It's kind of a crazy statement. The challenge is changing your foundation, even if it seems crazy, because you know that God is the one that delivers. And this is where you step out of theory into practice. And then once it becomes real, you can never unlive it again. You will always know that, wow, this works. This is amazing. All right, next one. Next one is this one thing you need. Luke chapter 10, verse 41. Somebody please read Luke chapter 10, verse 41.
I got it. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things.
Sorry, one more.
But one thing is needful, and Mary had chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her.
Thank you very much. Another peculiar story in the Bible. So, excuse me. Jesus comes to visit Mary and Martha, his longtime friends. It's very possible that actually they grew up together, that they were some kind of like third or fourth cousins. So they know each other. They're very comfortable with each other. They're like kind of cousins who grew up together. So Jesus is in the living room, and the people from the town heard Jesus coming, and they just swarmed the place. Like everybody wanted to hear him. And Martha is going crazy. She needs to host everybody, she needs to clean everybody, she needs to get the food for everybody. Does everybody have a drink? Wear the napkins, open the windows, turn the AC on. But she is like running around like crazy. And Mary sits in the front pew, right there in front of Jesus. And Martha is becoming annoyed and frustrated, and she wants Mary to help her with all these things that have to be done. And Mary just ignores her. And then Martha calls Jesus out. Like, Jesus, are you going to just let her treat me like this? Tell her to come and help me. And Jesus tells her then this. Like, Martha, come on. Like, yeah, there are many things that are important. But this is the one that is necessary. And Mary, she chose the right thing. And I'm not taking that away from her. How did Martha respond? Bible doesn't say. Did she explode in a nervous breakdown, or she decided to sit next to her sister? We don't know. But one thing we know, Jesus made an excellent point about this one thing that we need, and that is setting right your priorities in life. So, let's talk a little bit priorities. So, based on the story, what were Martha's priorities? Hosting. So let's say social priorities, right? Making sure that she's acting socially appropriate and acceptable, and that she delivers what the society expects of her. What else?
Well, though, I think that kind of painted it in a negative light, because I think she was trying to be hospitable too, which is painted really well along the Bible. Like, we need to be hospitable, or we should be. So I think her intentions were probably good, but then maybe, you know, it did kind of fog her from like what the actual priority should have been. And sometimes that does happen. Like, we're just trying to do good, but then it fogs us.
There is nothing wrong with what Martha was doing. It was normal. Actually, probably all of us would have done the same thing in the same situation. People come to our place. Okay, let's get the chairs for everybody. Let's make sure everybody's comfortable. Is anybody thirsty? Do you have, you know, perfectly normal thing. Like last week we were at your place. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, nothing wrong with that. Yes, absolutely. But right now I just want us to talk a little bit and kind of list out what were her priorities. So one of the priorities was this social thing, where this is the way that things should be done. So let's make sure I do it the best as I can, because that's how I was raised, that's how I was taught, that's how people around me do it, that's the way that things work in the society that we're in. So I better kind of stick to it. That's one priority. What else do we see over here as a priority? Okay.
Impose her priorities on other people.
Okay. So another thing over here, a priority that we have is, what's the right word? Not conformity. So another thing that we tend to do is also either like conform or try to conform others to whatever we label and consider to be the right way to do. This is the way that things should be done, so you better act appropriately. I can see you doing that with him quite often, you know, or with your kid, you know. There is a reason to it, because they don't know. And they're entitled not to know because of their youth. You know? But nevertheless, it is one of the priorities that we live with today. Next thing that we have. So what was Martha doing? She was serving everybody. So she had food, drinks. There are these basics. Like, we have these basic priorities in life. First of all, put food on the table, right? Make sure the electricity is paid. I don't want us to freeze and stay in dark tonight. Let's make sure that we have enough winter clothes for this kind of weather. You know, there are some basic priorities that we're dealing with. And then you meet basic priorities, then you move up. Then there are those social priorities. Then once the social priorities are met, you move up. Martha really wanted her house to leave an impression of like, we are a good place. We are not some place where kids run around and they don't listen and they do whatever they want. There is this element of self-esteem that she is trying to maintain and achieve. And all of these things are valuable in our life too as well, right? What is the first thing that you do when you get your paycheck? Pay your bills, right? First thing you do is pay your bills. First pay the mortgage, rent, car payment, whatever it is, credit cards. Then next thing is fill up the fridge, right? Going to Costco. Yay. Monthly, yeah, $200 Costco. Half the cart. Like, you know, like the Costco bills are going up as well. What is the next thing? You make sure all of your subscriptions are paid. Whether it's Netflix or gym, huh? They come automatically. They just go. You don't even know when they're gone. Yeah, there's like, you get a check in the end of the month, and by the 10th, it's completely depleted because, you know, Oh, the Amazon curse, my goodness. Grandma, I'm so sorry. Necessity. No, kids, there are things that we need, and there are things that we want. And we want them because we need them, right? It's always like that. Thank you for sharing. Now, there is nothing wrong with any of these things. We need the basics. We need the social connection. We need stuff for ourselves. These things are all perfectly fine. But over here, Jesus says, no, not really. That's fine, but the problem is not in you focusing on these things. He tells Martha, there are so many things that are important. He does not in any way neglect that. He actually acknowledges the fact that all of these things are so important. But he says there is only one thing that is really necessary. So, what is that one necessary thing? What is that one necessary thing that Mary has chosen? Because here's what Mary did. Mary broke all the rules. Social norms, basic needs, esteem, like all of these things just tossed in the trash so she could do what?
Be present with God. Be present with Jesus.
Okay. What is this one thing to change priorities with? To change priorities in?
Our attention? Our focus?
Okay. Elaborate,
Yeah.
please.
Well, it said Martha was distracted through doing all this stuff, so she wasn't the opposite, which is like focused and paying attention to what Jesus had to say.
You see, this is interesting thing. This is an interesting thing. We all read this story, and we still keep acting like Martha, even though the story is kind of pretty obvious. But it makes so much more sense to us to act like Martha, because she is getting the things done. And if you want to live a life, you have to get the things done. And Mary, she's slacking. And Jesus says, well, she did the better part than Martha. The problem that we have over here is that Jesus just doesn't make sense to us. Jesus says, change your priorities. And we're like, that makes no sense.
Things that we were talking about earlier, storing up my treasures in heaven, and that those things will last, they won't rust away. And it's the same thing with Martha here. Martha is focused on the social construct of how everything works. Those things come and go, but he will stay present. He will stay the same. And if all things end up fading away, his word won't.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So, doing all of these priorities that we just talked about, they're not going to improve your life. They're not going to improve you. They're just going to keep you going until the next cycle starts. But there is an option.
Another thing I wanted to say, like this kind of like an example, is like if we're like Mary, Right, Mary's the one that was distracted, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, working.
No.
No, Martha.
Martha.
Martha. So for like Martha, it's kind of like, I think about it like this. So I have to prioritize spending and playtime with Rafa because I so easily get distracted by all the things I have to get done. I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to do this because it's never ending. So I'm always like, have to be on top of it. But then I'm like, no, okay, I also have to prioritize playtime with my son because if I don't, then our relationship, becomes what is it, like distant? Yeah, distance. So I think that's kind of like here when we see this is Mary is choosing to prioritize her relationship with Jesus because she knows that all this work, all this cleaning, all this other stuff is always going to be there. It's never ending. But if I don't prioritize forming the relationship, it's just going to get distant. These other things will always take the place of what should be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes. So, this is what I want you to contemplate on. We always hold on to our priorities so things keep going naturally. I pay my bills, I buy the food, I make sure I have time for social connections, for myself, and everything keeps on going fine. Everything keeps on going naturally the way it's supposed to. But then Jesus over here twists it and he says, listen, I don't want you to do things naturally anymore. I want you to do things supernaturally. But in order for you to live a supernatural life, you have to start thinking in supernatural terms. You have to have supernatural priorities. And those priorities are, in Mary's explanation and to all of us, is pretty much what is the first and most important thing for you to achieve in life. And that is your divine connection. You have to go to work. Well, if you didn't take time for your divine connection, going to work is a waste of time. You have to, you have an appointment to make with your friends or with your son even. Yeah, it's an important thing, but if you didn't find the time to first invest into your divine connection, it's a waste of time. Even though it's super important, it's essential for you to play with your son. But again, it's a waste of time if you are not divinely connected before you engage with your son. Yeah. It's a waste of time if you're not divinely connected before you go to work. Before you do whatever you have to do. All of it is a waste if your divine connection is neglected. So set your priorities right. First, you build your foundation right. Then you set your priorities light in this one thing that is the only thing that is necessary. Everything else is optional. You don't pay your bills, you'll keep living. Might be miserable, but you will keep living. But disconnect from God, you'll die on the inside, as many people already have.
Yeah, I think I have a I have a pause when you say like it's a waste of time, because in a way like that's what makes it so hard to prioritize like our time with Jesus and doing things that will build that relationship, because it feels like it's not a waste of time to do all these other things like like to clean the house or do things for work or spend time with other people. Like it could feel good, and it doesn't feel like a waste of time. So I think the wording, that's maybe the issue. Like I don't think it's a waste of time, but it's not gonna get you, like you said, it's like, yeah, probably internally, we're not gonna get what we need and actually desire for. But also it's like, if it was so obvious that all this was a waste of time, then we probably would be doing more like Mary.
Let me elaborate.
You know
so,
what I mean?
Yes, I absolutely understand what
So I agree with wordings like.
Okay, let me double down on waste of time and explain why. Here's the thing. So, For example, as we mentioned, like, you will keep doing all of these things, but you'll stay the same in a spiritual sense. In your soul, you're going to stay the same. Yeah, you might improve, you might learn new things, you might experience new things. Your kind of life experience is going to grow for sure, but it's not going to grow in a direction where you're getting closer to understand this fifth dimension of God's presence and deepness of your purpose in this life. And on top of it, not deepness, sorry, depth. My English. Depth of your purpose in this life, and then on top of it, depth of eternity in a life with God. All of these things. That's why. So, but if you invest in your connection with God first, and that is the one thing that you focus on in daily life, you will take that with you to work. And you will run into that grumpy coworker that you pretty much avoid every single time not to pick up on their grumpiness. And you will actually give them a hug and compassion and laugh with them. And you will walk away, and they will walk away with your energy. And suddenly you change the world. But it happened because you walked in there with your divine connection first. In that sense, I say, doing anything in life, no matter how important it seems and no matter how accomplishing it feels, is a waste of time because it's not driving a positive change in your life or in lives of people around you. Does that make sense? I am trying to see everything from this spiritual point from where Jesus is looking at things, outside of the horizontal, you know? So we do all of these things with purpose. And purpose is living a better life. That's why we're trying to make more money. That's why we're trying to have a better job. That's why we're trying to get more engaged intellectually, socially, so we would grow and our life experience would be better. But the one thing that really makes it not better but excellent is bringing in this divine connection in there. Understanding depth of love and compassion that God has for you. And then you take that, love and compassion to other people. That is a whole different experience at a family gathering, at lunchtime at your work, or wherever you are. Does it make sense? You were not listening.
I was gonna say, Milos, that the way I see it is like we're all these little vessels, right? And like constantly we're being filled by so many different ideas out there, right? So scarcity, or worry, anxiety, sometimes it's good things, whatever, right? And so when I think about like, when I spend time with God and I'm reading my Bible, obviously I'm taking things in, right? I'm being influenced by the Word, so I'll feel, at least from my experience, I feel more peace, more joy, all these things, right, that come because the Holy Spirit fills us. So I think, okay, whatever our vessel is filled with, that's what gets spilled out. So if we're not taking the time to learn all these things, what's coming out is the things that we picked out from the outside world, the anxiety, the fear, the anger, the frustration, all these things.
Yeah.
But when you're trading them for things like what the Bible says is like, I'll give you peace, I'll give you joy, I'll give you, like all these things, you know, compassion and mercy, grace for others, those things start spilling out and you see it. So that's why I think, I do agree with what you're saying, that it's, in the spiritual sense, it's pointless if what is not coming out of us is all the good things that should be coming out.
Thank you very much. When you're filled up with divine presence in your life, stress, anxiety, fear of other people, social media, news, whatever it is, it's like ping pong balls off a wall. You know, you toss them, they don't even make a dent. They don't do anything. They just bounce off and leave. That's how, going back to the beginning of what we were talking about, that you have an opportunity to be joyful, happy, filled with common sense, always thinking positive. This is one of the ways how it works. God fills you, your faith, your connection with God fills you with all the positive things, and then you're not worried about negativity that you might be surrounded with.
Or you know how to handle it.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, how I learned all the things in the Bible.
Okay.
Things don't still affect me; they still do. But I've noticed personally, I can handle them better, or I know how to navigate them better, or I'm not stuck in that like negativity as long as I used to be. It's different.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Here's an example. A friend of mine, a few months ago, got diagnosed with cancer. And doctor wanted immediately chemo, you know, all the usual stuff, because the cancer was too big for a surgery. So they wanted to do the chemo first to shrink it down and then have the surgery. And she watched her husband die of cancer, and she believes that actually chemo is the one that killed him. So she's like, screw that, I'm not doing that. So she went on juice fasting. 34 days down the road, she says she'll never do juice fasting again in her life. It was the most miserable experience she ever had, but her cancer shrank to like 1/4 of the size that it was 34 days ago. And she went to check up with a doctor, and she says her doctor was just like in shock. Yeah, she's like, what in the world were you doing? Kind of like that.
Just juice fast?
Exactly, yeah. There is a pro.
Starving the cells.
Yeah. There's a program. It's called the Broyce therapy. It's like an old therapy back from like the 50s from an Austrian guy, Dr. Broyce. Again, long story short, why did I start sharing that? So, she had all of the reasons to be frantic, angry, disappointed, afraid, you know? But she had this idea, and one thing that I remember, like for as long as I known her, she was, oh, God will take care of me. She always had that attitude. When they were going through COVID, she got sick with COVID, God will take care of me. And she was fine. And now she's going through this process, and we talk over the phone, and you know, you can feel the energy. You can hear in voice, like in their voice, you can hear where they're at emotionally. And she's like, she sounds tired, worn out, but she's fine. She's like, yeah, I told you guys going to take care of me. You know? And this is like pretty extreme case, you know, but still that is what you're saying. You handle things differently when priorities to your divine connection is that one thing that you realize this is this one thing that is necessary. Things will come, things will go, and they will leave scars unless you focus on this one thing. They will leave traumas, they will leave lingering pain in your heart, in your mind. I'm not talking about physical. But having this priority of divine connection is a game changer. It just changes everything. All right, we are running late. We're going way too slow with this recap. Okay. Next thing, one thing to strive to, setting right goal in life. So somebody please read Psalm 27, verse 4. Psalm 27, verse 4.
The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple.
Thank you very much. Now, over here we are encouraged to set the right goal in life. And we learn from the lesson of David, who was a king at a time when he wrote this psalm. So, kind of, I'll speed up a little bit through this. So he says, one thing I have asked the Lord. And he's talking in past tense. So he contemplated on this. He contemplated on what should I ask the Lord? What should I ask him? What are the things that I need to ask him? And after a long period of contemplation, life experience, he boils it down to this. I have only one thing to ask him. What could he ask for? Riches, fame, victories over his enemies, his family, his well-being, taking care of his kids. None of that stuff. Absolutely none of that stuff. There is one thing that supersedes all of these other things. And then he says, so one thing I have asked the Lord, that I will seek after. Over here we see the future tense, his commitment. Like this one thing, this is what I'll be pursuing for the rest of my life. This is the only thing that matters. This is literally one goal that I'll pursue as long as I breathe. And then he says that I may dwell in the house of the Lord. Now, metaphorically, he didn't really live in a monastery for the rest of his life. He lived a normal life like everybody else. But what he talks about is the concept of my goal is, no matter where I am, no matter what's going on around me, no matter the circumstances, I will be there with the Lord. His presence, I will always be aware of that. That prayer of presence that we did in the beginning, I do that every single day, 3 times a day. And at this point, I do it for 15 minutes. I just sit and just enjoy in his presence, literally. 45 minutes every single day. For the past year, I've been doing that. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Like, seriously, it's amazing. And what Jasmine and I started doing, it's been maybe like a month. I have hourly reminders on my phone. Just like on every hour, the reminder will pop. And at that time, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm taking a 2-minute break. I'm going to go outside if I'm with somebody or whatever, but I'm going to take 2 minutes and just remember his presence. Be grateful for the things that happened to me. We don't talk in those moments. There is no verbal communication. I simply enjoy the fact, this is awesome. Like, seriously, life is awesome. You guys have no idea how much positivity you can accumulate if every single hour for 2 minutes you remind yourself how blessed you are, how good life is, and how amazing it is to be in the presence of the Lord. I kid you not, like, it's amazing. So, David goes on, and pretty much he says all of days of my life. So he's planning to do this pretty much for the rest of his life. He's setting this as his daily goal. No matter what he's doing, he will be aware that God is there with him. And here's the thing. You guys remember what happened with Bathsheba, with his third wife, right? So, do you think in that moment he remembered the presence of the Lord? Or when he arranged for a murder of her husband, did he remember at that moment the presence of the Lord? What do you think?
Maybe it was. Maybe it was in the back of his head, but he wasn't paying attention. I feel like he would have been, because I feel like your conscience speaks. I think he was just ignoring his conscience.
Could be, because here's what happens. So, David sees a woman taking a bath, and he is pretty much on top of the city. He is looking from his castle, so he has the ability to see in other people's homes, and he sees this amazingly attractive woman, and he arranges for her to bring her to him. So she gets pregnant, and he knows who she is, because one of his generals is her husband, but he's waging war for David. So David arranges for her husband to get killed. And after he gets killed, he marries this woman because she is bearing his child. So, prophet Nathan comes to David. You guys remember that? David, Nathan, prophet of God, what does God have for me today? It's a beautiful day. Let me tell you a story. So there was this rich man who had plenty of sheep. You guys remember that? And this rich man had a party. He was throwing a party and had people coming, and he didn't want to take any of his sheep. And his neighbor, who was a poor man, he only had one sheep. He took his sheep and he slaughtered it and prepared a meal for his guests. What are we going to do about that, David? And David bursts in righteousness. That man should be punished. He will return quadruple for what he did, and he will pay for that. And then Nathan looks him in the eyes and tells him, you are that man. What happened in that moment? In that moment, the presence of the Lord became known to him. Any other king, even David had that ability. David could pick up Nathan, you know what, throw him in the dungeon, he insulted me. He's not going to talk to me like that. Nobody talks to a king like that. He could have done that, right? But instead, David breaks down. Because he remembers. Suddenly everything makes sense. And somebody mentioned conscience. Maybe it was brewing in the back of his head, but he keeps ignoring it, pushing it away. And now when Nathan makes it obvious, he realizes what he had done. That is living in the presence of the Lord. What I encourage you guys is set this one goal for your life. No matter where you are, who you're with, especially when you're by yourself, no matter what you're doing, what your attempts and plans are, be aware of the presence of the Lord right there next to you. Whatever you're dealing with, He wants to make it better. Don't ignore Him. Whatever you want to do, make sure it gives Him glory. Because He is there. And that's what changed David's life. That's what made him the one that God favored. Because he was constantly aware of that. That was the most important thing to him. God, awesome, you're here. Yeah, let's go. Chances you will screw up in life are substantially lesser when you do that. Take Him with you when you go shopping. Remember that. Take Him with you when you are watching TV or on social media. Remind yourself that He can improve whatever you're doing. And you'll make better choices. Okay, we got to wrap this up. We are prolonging this. One thing to know, set in the right perspective. So, a blind man, Jesus heals a blind man. He was blind from his birth. And nobody believes Him. And everybody is bashing Him like He was never blind. That's nonsense. And they're trying to discount this miracle because it happened on Sabbath. And you're not supposed to do anything on Sabbath by Jewish laws. So they believe this can be from God. There is no way that this can be from God if this man is breaking commandments and he's doing this kind of crazy miracles. And this man says, I know one thing. I was blind, but now I see. Whether he broke commandments, whether he is a criminal, whether he is a sinner, I don't know. Is he who he is? I don't know. But I know one thing. The miracle of God happened. And that's what matters. So, one thing to know, again, I'm speeding this up. So, one thing to know over here is to understand that recognizing who in your life is God sent is going to be labeled pretty much not by what they say, not by what they believe, but by how they act. There is a lot of very cruel Christians, you know, and a lot of very kind Muslims. Not even go that far. I grew up in an atheist society. That was the country I come from, communist country. Nobody believed in God. But everybody was so kind. People were so caring. People loved each other, cared for each other. Who is from God? A hating Christian or a kind atheist that helps you? The idea is, don't label people based on what you think they should do or how you think they should act and so on. But look at, as Jesus said, recognize them by their fruits. If they look like me, they're on my side. If they don't look like me, no matter what they say, no matter how they call themselves, they have nothing to do with me. And the last one is the right thing to do. Paul says, one thing I do, I forget what lies ahead. I forget what lies behind and strain forward to what lies ahead. What lies behind you? Do you have regrets in life? Do they hurt? Some of them do, right? Do you have traumas in life caused by somebody else? Is there anything you can do to change that? Traumas that I was caused in life, people are already dead. I can't go back to them. There is nothing I can do about it. Do you have pain you carry around? Do you have your hand up? Paul says, whatever drags you down, you have to let it, whatever from your past drags you down, you have to let it go. Do you have hard times dealing with it? Find a way to figure it out. Again, I'm just recapping. We had like a whole hour and a half just talking about this. So, hope you guys remember what we talked about. But Paul's idea is this. I'm forgetting what lies behind means I'm letting go of my limitations. One thing that we say is like, well, that's the way I am. Or it is what it is. Or this is the best it can get, and so on. And we cap the possibilities. You know? And Paul says, no, stop doing that. Who you are right now, that's who you are right now. But that doesn't mean that that same person you have to be tomorrow. Tomorrow you should be a better person. That trauma from your childhood, that is your childhood trauma, not your present trauma. The only reason it's a present trauma is because you keep reliving it again and again and again. When Paul says forgetting, he doesn't mean literally forget, like, boom, it's out of my head. No, he pretty much means give no value to it anymore. Pay no attention to it anymore. Yeah, these things happened. Yeah, they hurt. But today, I am not going to allow those things to define who I am today, or even better, who am I going to be tomorrow. Okay, it's not my car. And pretty much the whole point that Paul makes over here is, and we're going to wrap up with that, stop living your life reruns. Stop living your life reruns. So like this happened to me, and that happened to me, and now because of that, I'm like this and I'm like that. Stop doing that crap. It's not helping, quite the contrary, and it's not really going to take you anywhere but backwards. Huh? Oh, who are you going to be tomorrow is completely up to you. Literally, it's completely up to you. You can choose to rerun yet again what happened in your past. Yeah, that's your choice. But that's not going to improve you. Or you can say, no, next week I am going to be different. So here's a quick example. So last Sunday night, Gordon and I made a bet that both of us are going to drop under 200 pounds. So I was, because like we had a barbecue and blah, blah, and I was 212 pounds. After that, and he was 208. And we're like, okay, you drop below 200 pounds or you're shaving your mustache off. And he tells me, like, you drop under 200 pounds or you're growing your mustache. And so he dropped below 200 officially on Thursday morning. Like he really wanted his mustache. And right now I'm at like 2:03, so I still have enough time, kind of. I still have enough time to get where I want to be. But the idea is this: you can be whoever you want to be. And they made a whole big deal with millennials. That was the biggest mistake that parents were teaching their millennials. You can be whoever you want to be. And no. Well, you can be whoever you want to be within reason. That's nonsense. You can really be whoever you want to be. Do you want to be skinny? You can be skinny. Do you want to be happy? You can be happy. Do you want to be free from these past burdens? Yeah, you can. I mean, you have to choose new you. And this is not something for you to achieve. Again, you're not the one who achieves new you. God is the one who achieves new you. But you pick new you. It's like going to the department store with your parents and picking the clothes you want to wear, and they pay for it. And they buy it for it, and then tomorrow you wear it because it's... This is exactly the same thing. Like, the point of change is not in your hands. The point of change is in God's hands. But the point of choice is completely in your hands. And this applies beyond eternal. This applies to external as well. This applies literally to everything in life. Envision who you want to be. Envision your ideal self. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And then present it before Jesus. And say, hey, this is who I would really like to be. Mind helping me. And then talk to him every single day about that. And you know what's going to start happening? I kid you not. Change. I kid you not. And this is something I can vouch personally from my personal experience in the last year. Like who I was a year ago and who I am now is so much closer to that ideal me that I want to be. And I literally have like benchmarks through the past year that marked my physical, emotional, mental, spiritual progress. But I really decided I don't want to be who I used to be anymore. I don't want to be who I am right now. I want to be better. And as I said, I don't try. I really don't try. I just put it before Jesus. And I invest into my divine connection with him. Into deepening my relationship with him, deepening my understanding with him. And these things, they just happen. They literally just happen. So, if you guys want to kind of go into details about any of these topics that we talked today, you'll find it on the YouTube, you'll find it on our Facebook page. You can go through those videos again and just kind of see what everybody was saying and what we were talking up in detail. But one thing that I encourage you is this: don't sit idle anymore. Don't wait to do your part. And your part is making a choice and then putting a focus on it in your communication with God. And then he does things. He said that. You remember? Ask, what's going to happen? Seek, knock. And this is not empty words. This is a promise. This is actually a description of spiritual laws of engagement with God. He's not telling you go and seek. He's not telling you go and make it. He's not telling you barge through that door. No. Just put your attention and ask him. And as crazy as it is, I've seen that in the last year of my life. This is how things work. Try it out. Give him a chance. As I said, internal, external. Do you want to think more positive or do you want to have more money? Same rule applies. And it works every single time. Any questions? So there are actually no questions. Good. Okay. I gave you like 3 seconds. Okay. You guys want to then, as usual, close your eyes, bow your heads. Let's pray. Dear Lord, dear Father, this is so awesome. It's so awesome. First, for me, it's so awesome to see how amazingly present you were in this last year, and how amazingly you changed me and made me a better person, so I can share this with full confidence to these friends of mine over here, how amazing you can change them as well and make their life beautiful and awesome. So, starting from today, please remind them to do this one thing every day and show them mightily how amazing your presence could be if they do it. And may it be a blessing to you, may it be a joy to us as we witness these changes in our lives. Amen.
You're teaching me with my imperfections, reaching me when I run the other direction. I'm undone, unraveling my plans. Make me whole again, rebuild me from the inside out, in a way only you know how. You're teaching